Dr. Ravi Zacharias has been a prolific speaker, and his inspiring messages and exhortations in the last 4 decades has taken him through distinguished universities such as Harvard, Princeton, Oxford. His oratorial skills and insights have impressed leaders, senators, governors and diplomats across the world. Founder, Chairman and CEO of Ravi Zacharias International Ministries RSIM, he has authored books such as Can Man Live Without God?, The Grand Weaver and so on. Dr. Ravi Zacharias, I suppose this is your 3rd visit to Trivandrum. The first perhaps with an astronaut in 1985, second in 2007 at the Senate Hall. May I ask you, sir, the purpose of your visit this time?
Your comment brings back memories to me, Professor Abraham. We were here in the 80s with Colonel James Irwin, the astronaut, had a wonderful visit here. But this time we are here for a very specific reason. It's a commemoration of our 25th anniversary for our ministry, which is Ravi Zacharias International Ministries Life Focus Society, headquartered in Chennai. We actually have bases in about 8 or 9 different countries, and now India is celebrating 25 years, wonderful years in which we've seen so many good things happen.
Could you please elaborate on the activities of RSIM?
The primary audiences that we address are actually 4 in nature: the academic, the political, the entertainments, and the business community. Those are the 4 arenas in which we find ourselves because we consider them to be the shapers and influencers of culture. We deal with issues and challenges that they face. For example, last year speaking to some of the Bollywood stars, they gave me the subject to speak life beyond the box office. Oftentimes with business people, we are talking about business ethics and values, balancing the commercial side of your life with your private side of your life. But in addition, we do humanitarian work as well. Women and children at risk primarily, or working with children with AIDS or the destitute. It's an extraordinary work, and we do that under the banner of Wellspring International, which comes under RZIM internationally.
In this context, could you tell us more on morality, corruption, issues of integrity in the context of...
Last year, towards the end of last year, about December of 2010, the BBC did a survey globally on what people felt was the number 1 problem facing them. What is the number 1 problem people face in the world? And they said for the first time, environmental and poverty issues were displaced as 1 and 2. The number 1 problem, they said, was the problem of corruption. That they could not trust leadership. They could not trust those who were in power. They could not trust authorities because of the manipulations and all of the deceptions that take place. If you take a look at all that's happened in the business world recently, big name companies, big name tycoons, and all that has gone on with fraud and deceit and money and power, it is endemic globally, but actually quite more pronounced in the Indian scene, and it's in the news every day. It has to be dealt with. It tells you this much: no matter where you go and what you do, the depravity of man always goes with the individual, and if that is not addressed, everything is merely symptomatically dealt with.
As part of the celebration, Srimulan Club Vadakad, what would be your theme of the talk?
I'm dealing with the subject of the Grand Weaver, how time relates to eternity. What are the values by which we govern ourselves, and how God takes the moments of time almost like a brush and a grand artist and does the portrait in every individual life in the light of eternity.
Sir, if God is the Grand Weaver, is not the future of man predestined by God himself? Does it not lead us to fatalism?
No, it doesn't. It only does, in fact, if you think the freedom of the will is an illusion. But if God has given us that supreme gift of freedom, then and you have to think of it this way: if the greatest ethic is love, love is impossible without freedom, which means freedom has to be given, and God gives us that facility of freedom, and fatalism is only there if God is completely sovereign with no freedom given to any human being.
Sir, we live in troubled times with events like terrorism, nuclear fallout, earthquakes, or economic crisis. If God is in control, why do these things happen?
You know what I find fascinating, Professor Abraham? Even those who worship Mother Earth When problems come, blame Father God. That's a very strange reaction to have. It comes in a paradigm. First of all, you have to define evil. What is evil? Where does it come from? You have to define purpose, destiny, meaning. All of these things have to be defined. To simplistically say it's all God's fault and therefore, he has to explain to us, is taking a finger of one aspect and thinking you've got the fist of reality. So this is a paradigm that has to be dealt with extensively in my CDs and in my talks and our material available on our website. We've given all kinds of full-length talks on this. I've dealt with it in my writings as well. So no, when you assume evil, you assume good. When you assume good, you have to assume a moral lawgiver. If you assume a moral lawgiver, you're assuming God. So raising the question doesn't disprove God. You have to find not how to solve this problem, but how to resolve this problem with the freedoms God has given us and the entailments of those freedoms.
As you travel across the globe and meet dignitaries, policymakers and government officials, what's the message you carry, share or convey?
Some time ago I was in Amman, Jordan, and having tea with Prince Raad, who's actually the last heir to the throne in Iraq, a cousin of the former King Hussein. I asked him, what is the greatest challenge in your part of the world? He said two, youth and leadership. Youth and leadership. I said, could you explain what you mean? He said, youth need models to look at and admire. Leadership needs values and integrity. If we don't have both of these, our society will implode under the weight of no models to follow and the power of youth with no values to pursue. So I think when I'm dealing with leadership, we are dealing with how to influence young people, young men and women, but you ultimately have to define your own purpose in life. Values don't stand in midair. They are defined as the particulars on the basis of ultimate pursuits. That's why my book, Can Man Live Without God, is so definitive. It was Will Durant who said the greatest problem of our time is not East versus West, not North versus South, not capitalism versus communism. The greatest question of our time is, can man live without God? What I think he means by that is, how are we going to define our values? If we don't have values based on God, everything is free-floating, and corruption will be common, and destruction will be around the corner.
Since you mentioned your books, we all know that you are a profound philosopher and writer. You have authored books such as Walking from East to West, Beyond Opinion, Recapture the Wonder, or several other books. Is there any one book close to your heart?
It's hard to tell. There's a humorous line that the closest men will ever come to giving birth is writing books, because there's such a laborious process involved. Each book has its own little imprint in your heart. But I would say the all-defining work would be actually two. Walking from East to West is my own spiritual pilgrimage. Born and raised in Chennai, moving through Delhi, ultimately to Toronto, Canada, now in the United States, and teaching in various universities and so on. That's my personal pilgrimage. But Can Man Live Without God deals with the parameters, the boundaries of the four questions: origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Those are the four questions that form your worldview. So I would say that book probably reflects the philosophical side of my life, but I would say Grand Weaver is the existential one, how God paints that plan for you on the canvas of your heart and brings beauty out of all of the threads as he pulls them together.